here we are. We have the hole cut out in the middle of our table. And if you'll notice, I don't know how well you can see it, there's also a rabbet cut out around the edge of the hole. Now, a rabbet is basically just a shallow cutout that acts more or less as a lip. And I do that with the rabbet cutter. Now, I would have shown you how to cut it out, except I cut it out and I shot the video, and unfortunately, I've had audio problems. I've had camera problems. It hasn't been a good episode so far. But we're recovering, and we're doing a good job at it. So anyway, I've got a rabbet cutter here in my router. And basically, it's got two cutting wings on it and a ball bearing. Now, the ball bearing is going to ride around the edge that we cut out last night. And then the wings cut into the top of the wood as far down as I set the depth on the router. And I do that like so. Okay, in this case, I used a scrap piece of plexiglass, laid it across the foot plate of my router, and then adjusted the depth of it until the cutting wing, the edge of the cutting wing, was level with my plexiglass. So this gives me the right depth to cut down into the top. So when I lay the plexiglass in, I'm not going to have a lip between the top and the plate that I'm going to mount the router to. So it'll be a nice smooth run for any stock I put over it. So what happens is, like I said, the bearing rides against the inner portion that we cut out before. Just like that. Well, the wings will cut into this portion as I draw it through and around. Now, while that's doing that, the blank plate. Now, had I done this perfectly, I would know that I'm going to have a certain radius on each corner, according to the rabbeting bit that I'm using to cut the lip. Well, in my case, I happen to know that radius is the same shape as a piece of 3/4 inch pipe elbow. The flanges on the elbow are a little bit oversized from the pipe. So if I lay it down here, take my pen, line it up so the edges of my plexiglass are meeting up with the edge of my elbow, and just draw the contour. And I'll do this on all four corners. Now, these corners that I have to take off, basically I'll use a hacksaw or a fine saw or a file. I'll use a saw to take off the major portion of material, and then I'll take a file or a piece of sandpaper and smooth it over and take out the rest until I'm down to the line that I want to have. And that'll allow it to sit down into the joint in the tabletop perfectly. So we'll go ahead and we'll cut this out. We're going to continue to let this harden up, and I'll be back when it's all ready to go. And there we go. It fits real nice now. Okay. We've got the plate cut. It now fits our groove to go along with the other plates that I made earlier. Now we need to lay out the plate to accept our router, our saw, or whatever. So first thing I'm going to do is extend these lines that I put into the table when I was making the pattern for the hole that we drilled, our plate hole. So I've got center and center. So I'm just going to re-extend those so they go across the plate to give me the center of my table plate. It helps to not set your pen down where you can't find it. So there's one. There's two. Gonna make that first one a little bit darker. Now I'm using a Sharpie marker here, so it'll draw on plastic and stay without wiping off with my thumb. So now I've got center line for this. Now for a router, I'm going to mount it on center. Say for a circular saw, I'm going to move it off center. It's going to give me a little bit more room for my motor housing to fit down into the table. It's going to give me a lot more room for a left-hand cut. With this type, when you're using a circular saw, it's kind of hard to get a right-hand cut because the way the blade's mounted in the body. So now I have to lay out to the plate to accept my router. Now the great thing about routers is they all come with a removable foot plate, or at least most of the ones that I've worked with have. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this removable foot plate off. I'm going to remove it. And kind of risk with. So I'll go ahead and get these screws out of here. Now it just so happens in my garage I have a drawer for accepting router screws. And I'll put that away in a little while. Now, I know my router is going to be underneath the table. It's going to be facing up like this. There's the foot plate for it. Now I can take that foot plate and set it down here. Now I know the orientation of the foot plate or how I want it because the lock for the router is on the back side. I want that side looking at me because I'm on the working side of the table. So I can remove that and get it out of my way. And now I'm going to align the center with the center of my foot plate. I have a couple other mounting screws that I use for other situations that are also giving me some help here. So now I will mark that. And it helps if you remember to use the end of the pen that has the small marker on it. This guy's great. It's a dual Sharpie, fat tip on one end, skinny tip on the other. Now that I have my holes marked, I'm going to take my mallet and a center punch. I'm going to move my plate out onto solid ground here because I'm going to be striking it. Last thing you want to do is strike a plastic plate when it's not supported in the middle. Okay, all the holes went nicely through. We'll go ahead and return it. Now that I can see through it, I can see the divots I just made very clearly. With these starters, I know that my drill is not going to wander on me. So if I just drill nice and slowly, I won't melt the plastic, making it harder to fit the screw through. It's not good. Like I said, the drill's not going to wander on me, so the hole is going to be right where I planned for it to be. So now I'll go ahead and mount a countersink up into the drill. Okay, and with that, we'll do a quick test. And there we go. That screw head is now sitting below the surface of the panel. So if I run a piece of stock over it, it's not going to be binding up on that screw head. Now I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for the next 4 holes. And I'm going to mount the router base, and then we'll set up to drill the center hole so we can get some bits coming up through our table, because having a router table doesn't do us any good if bits won't come up to cut. So I'll be right back.